So now we are ready to actually build out our database. We want to build out the tables in that database, start adding items to that, and then actually rendering out these database items in our template or in our front end instead of that static data that we have. So this is diagram that I drew up with Draw SQL app. It's a website that allows us to do something like this. So I really like it, and we are going to go through this structure, and we are going to talk about each uh, table, what it's going to look like, the relationships, and then how we are actually going to build this out in Django. So let's start talking about Django here and go into the database that we are using. So we are going to be using SQLite by default in Django. If you go into the backend folder, you should see this. Django gives us an SQLite database to work with. This is good for testing, but in the long run, we are going to work with Postgre because this is much better for production level databases and something that we can use in the long term. We really don't want to use SQLite for something like this. Uh, so Django starts us off with SQLite and it already has its configured in the backend. So if we go to settings.py, we can go into the database table here and so I will just scroll down. I want to show you where it's at. Look for this connection right here. So this is the connection that tells us which database we are using later on. So when we are using a real database, we will have credentials, things like the password, the actual string, and to connect to the database and things like that. So we'll just change this up right here. So this is the point, this is pointing us to our SQLite database right here, and all we need to do to actually create the database, because right now we have the file, we have the connection, and all we need to do is apply a migration. So what a migration is going to do is it's going to build out the tables and set up our first database. So if we look right here in our terminal, Django is going to tell us what we have: 18 unapplied migrations. So a migration just basically sets up our database. And then once we make changes, we just have to rerun migrations, and these changes will be made to the database. So just to get things started, let's just go ahead and actually run those migrations. So I'm going to clear my terminal, and we can just do this by doing python manage.py and then migrate. So remember, we are running this from the back end folder, and we are just going to do migrate, and so when I run this, we are going to see all of these migrations being applied. So what this just did is it took any changes that we needed to make, any preparations that Django had for us, and it went ahead and applied those migrations. So right now we must migrated our database, and if we run that one more time, let's just actually clear our terminal. We'll just do CLS. If we run that again, it's going to tell us that we have no migrations to make. So once we actually make some more changes, then we can make migrations again, and Django will uh, update our database and make those changes. So let's go ahead and actually talk about models.py. So in models.py, this is where we are actually going to build out our database tables. So within our app in base in models.py, Django is going to use models to create database tables. And so these models are just classes and the class name. So whatever we create the class, that's going to be the database table. So if we create a class called models, or if we create a table called product, this is now going to be a database table. Now any attributes in that class are going to be database columns. So we will build that out here, and then we will apply those migrations, and those changes will be made. So let's go ahead and actually start reviewing this diagram here. So in this case, our Django already gives us a user model to work with. So we are not going to have to build out this table, and these are just some of the attributes that it has. I think it has a few more, but right here this is just a class in Django, and then these are the attribute, and this is going to be a database table. Now let's go ahead and look at the structure. So the first one I want to look at is going to be a product. So a product is going to be connected to a user by a one-to-many relationship, because a user uh, can build out multiple products. So that's going to be the relationship connection there. Now a product can have multiple reviews, so actually need to change this relationship. So a product can have multiple reviews, and a product also needs a user. So a user can write multiple reviews on different products, and then a product can have multiple reviews. So you see the connections here, and this is just telling us those relationships. So let's go into the order now. So user can build out an order, and this is going to be like our shopping cart or the actual cart, and inside of that cart we can build out order items. So these will be the items in the cart. Now an order item needs to be connected to a product here. So we need to know which product the user is buying, what's the relationship, and what's the price, and the order item. That's how it's connected to a product. And then we have an order itself. An order needs a shipping address. So we are going to prompt the user to give us a shipping address, and this basically sums up our database structure. So we are going to go ahead and start building these out. Just want to make sure that you can see the zoom there, and we are going to start by building out our product model right here. So let's go ahead and go into our backend here, and the first thing I want to do is actually start working with that default Django user model. So I want to show you the admin panel before we get started, and then show you how we can actually start seeing our data and how we can start working with it. So from here, to create our user, we can just do python manage.py. So and create super user. And the reason why we are able to do this is because we applied our migrations. So once you type that in, you are going to be prompted to give a username and an email and a password. So if I leave this blank, that's going to be my username. But I want to just use Dennis name. You can use your name. And I also want to set up an email, and that is fake email, Dennis at the rate email.com or gmail.com. So we'll just create a fake email and then a password. Okay. So I'm actually typing right now, and it's not going to show it there for security purpose. So go ahead and just type out your password. It's not going to show it, type in, so don't get confused there. So let's turn on our server and let's actually go into the admin panel, and so we can open that up by just going to port 8000, and we can do /admin in that URL. So in here, whatever username and password you added, go ahead and add that. And this is our Django admin panel. So from the admin panel, we can actually start seeing our database. We can start seeing our tables and the items in our database, and we can even work with that data. So in this case, we have our user table which Django created by default, and then we can see our user that we just created. So we can actually edit the user, we can even delete the user, and we can add a new user also. So later on, when we add in products and orders, we'll be able to see that data once it's registered with the Django admin panel. So later on, we don't want to actually have to work with the Django admin panel. So the idea is to create our own functionality for this, but this is just a good quick start. So